Good morning to you all, and good morning to everyone who's here listening, and also through the Tilly communication. Today, mm, what I thought may be perhaps something that I wanted to speak for a long time, and it is maybe the time to speak about, which is actually about, as you have all read it in my links announcement, a grace. And now we all have come into this world, and how we have come into this wonderful and beautiful world of the human, particularly of this time, where actually there's so much prosperity, where there's so much, historically speaking, the most peace on the earth in the human civilizations. And then not only that, then there is the dharma, then there's the lineages of the dharma, there's the all of the world's lineage of the dharma, and particularly we have our own, the Buddhist world of dharma and its lineages, the Hinayana lineage, the Mahayana lineage, and the Vajrayana lineage, the three yanas. Now, somehow, it seems like since we don't know, we couldn't actually see our own past lives and what we have done in the past lives, that has sort of forged the connection. But we certainly have done something, and we must have done something very positive to forge the connection to the Dharma that we have in our lives. We have not just only our Dharma in reading books from the libraries and from the bookshops, what we can actually purchase, but we have the lineage, the succession of the lineage masters who have passed down the oral teachings down to us, down to our own ears. And then we have that as a sort of a means to work with all and everything in our lives. Of course, Dharma is not going to sort of necessarily take care of everything, but it certainly does give us a view of how we could actually work with everything, and how we could actually take in a situation and then apply the Dharma. Applying the Dharma here means applying the Dharma on our own mind as we interact with the situations here. Now, there is this sort of like a whole path ahead of us, and we have maybe come far, and sometimes when we actually feel despondent, we feel we haven't come so much far. But when we look back from where we have started, it is certain that we have really come very far. From not knowing anything about the Dharma or how to work with mind, with the wisdom and the skillful means of the Dharma, to knowing much, how to work with one's mind and how to work with one's emotions and how to work with one's life, applying their wisdom and the skillful means of the Dharma. So in that way, we have become, in a way, quite enriched, and we have come very far, and we are ongoingly making a lot of progresses every year. That's just when I observe with my students. It seems like they are really coming quite. They have come very far, and they are continuously making a lot of progresses. And I feel very positive about that, and I feel very positive about each and every one of you as my student. That doesn't mean that I don't have, other things to say. That doesn't mean that, there's no progress to be made. Furthermore, yes, there is progress to be made. Furthermore, and continuously so. But I think we are in a very sort of a good place, as in a sort of to continue to make the progress in this life, and however we are able to dedicate and commit ourselves to the path and the time that we have. According to that, how much we are to be able to make progress is going to be determined. But I think even if we are not able to go all the way in this sort of coming lifetimes, I think if we carry on in this fashion, if we carry on in this mode, in the intermediate as well as also in the lifetimes to come, we are surely to become enlightened. We are surely to become enlightened because we have everything that is needed to become enlightened. Now in there, then really the bodhicitta comes to my mind the most. And the bodhicitta is actually based on compassion and wisdom, as we know. And when we speak about a compassion first, it always seems like it's in a kind of an emotion. It's an emotion that you must feel. It's emotion that you must always sort of have. It's an emotion that should determine your sort of like a course of actions. And it is, yes, it is an emotion, and it is an emotion for sure, as in a sympathy or as in an empathy, however you call it, empathy or sympathy, or ability to empathize, ability to sympathize and feel the sympathy or the empathy in one's heart. But yet at the same time, I think it has to be guided. It has to be guided by the wisdom, because as an emotion, it could be just very strong at once, and then it come up very strong at once, and then it can die down, and then it can actually go away. So there's no really a reliable source to make that emotion of empathy or the sympathy into a sort of like ongoing path and practice. So the emotion of the compassion or any other emotions that is a positive, regardless of compassion or faith or trust or any other emotions, it has to be guided by the wisdom. Now the wisdom is very, in the Buddhist, simple and also complete. And simple in a sense, we are all human beings. First of all, living on this planet. Just as we were born, we have this sort of like a need to strive for our own happiness. We long for our own sort of happiness to be much abundance in our lives. we also, just as we are born, strive to shade our suffering. We long to be free from our suffering and the conditions of suffering. Now in that, we are all born together. We are all born together as one humanity. We are all born together as one humanity and one human mind. And that is to be respected. And that is to be respected with the deepest of deepest, our own utmost care and love. It is not in any way exclusion of yourself, but it's also not that you only care for yourself and not for the others. We must try to care for all. We must equalize ourselves with all of the rest of the human beings that is walking on the planet. And then beyond that, we must actually equalize ourselves with all of the sentient beings, visible and non-visible, throughout the space. And feel that we are all as a one organism. We are all as a one organism that actually strives for the happiness naturally, and that strives for the joy, and that tries to sort of like do its best to cultivate the conditions and the causes of that happiness and joy. Similarly, we all are as in a one organism that actually strives to shade our own suffering that is in hand, and we try to also shade any unhappiness that we experience in hand with the conditions that we are aware and conditions that we are not quite aware. So in there's no really difference between ourselves and others at all. There's no gap between ourselves and others at all. We may look different. We may speak different language. We may be a man and woman. We may be a rich and poor. We may be someone who's well educated and someone who's illiterate. We may be ill and we may be healthy. However it is, in the core, what's going on in our own mind is what's going on in all. And that must be respected. That must be valued as the foremost important to respect it. That must be foremost important to be acknowledged. That must be foremost important to be where actually we can build our sense of empathy with others. Biologically, how we are related with one another has its own place. But this goes beyond that. This is a universal. So here, when we actually come to really deeply from within our own kind of principles and within our own deep kind of like wisdom of the Buddha, of the past and the present and the future alone with our own sort of consent, our own intelligence, our own beliefs, our own values. Respect this, acknowledge this, and then really hold this dear to our heart. Then we actually become genuinely graceful person. All the source of the grace in my mind comes from being able to equalize oneself and others in this very fundamental wisdom of how we are all as in one organism, how we are all as in a one race of sentient being. Now from there, then, we have this sort of like a practice of feeling the empathy increasingly for others. And then in there, doing so, we'll realize that for so many lifetimes, even this is a fact, we have been led by our own confusions, led by our own ignorance, led by our own sense of self-centeredness. That sort of like made us often just exclude others and think of ourselves and what's taking place just in one's own life. But that is, as Shantideva points it out, is the past aspect of you. Now from here with the Buddhist teachings and from here with the profound wisdom of the Bodhisattva, we are actually newborn. And this newborn person with the wisdom and the willingness and will to practice the Bodhisattva should actually be able to counteract the past and the past habits and trump the past and the past habits. Though it is not easy. It is not easy for anyone. But it gives us a great hope to really follow on the footsteps of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and the masters of the past. And that kind of a positive outlook of one's life, positive outlook of one's self, to be able to make progress in this world of human lifetimes to come, to be a benefit for oneself and for the benefit of others, gives us so much of a grace. So much of a grace. Grace that actually is not that we are actually seeking from outside. We are hoping to come from outside. It's actually permeating from inside of our own. From our own principles, from our own beliefs, from our own mind of wisdom, that is wisdom of the Buddhas of the three times. Compassion, that is the compassion of the Buddhas of the three times. So in there, we have really as a Buddhist, lot to actually appreciate and lot to really digest and lot to really work ahead as an individual and as a community and as an actually society in large. What is the work that is ahead of us as an individual is how we can actually overcome our own habits that is so tenacious and difficult. And so almost mechanically just comes without any premeditation. Habit is just like a habit. It's something that you get used to, and then it just sort of like stays with you. Like soon as we see a escalator, we think escalator is going up and up and up, rolling, and then when we actually step on, we have that built-in habit in our mind as if it should do that. And then sometimes when escalator is not actually on roll, we actually get shocked, or we get almost fall down. So in that way, there are so many habits like that in ourselves. But when it really comes down to it, it is actually of the body, speech, and the mind. Body, speech, of the mind, that we have to really be aware of ourselves. That is any way hurtful, that is in any way brings harm to others, other living beings. Soon as we are aware of that, we must try to restrain. We must really try to have a strong and stronger resolution to restrain. That is the number one aspect of the Tsultum, number one aspect of the Shila principle, to restrain. Now I know in the West, sometimes when the word restrain is being used, it is almost sounding like some kind of imposition from the outside. It is not imposition from the outside. It is from one's own core wisdom. It is from one's own core value. It's from one's own kind of a resolution to be on the path that we must actually sort of restrain. And it is the advice of the Buddha. And it is advice of all the Bodhisattvas. It is the advice of all the masters. So we must actually, while respecting all of the three jewels, we must also do that as a respecting your own core values as a Buddhist, your own core values as a practitioner, your own core values as how a bodhicitta is the only pathway to the enlightenment. And in the bodhicitta, the equality of oneself and others, seeing how oneself and others are equal in this way and strives for the happiness and the suffering. Happiness to be gained and suffering to be removed, how we are all identical. So in there, however, we are resoluted in heart and in our mind, in our wisdom, in our knowledge, still the habit can be, as we know, tenacious. When the habit comes as a tenacious and then makes us do unconsciously or consciously for the moment, we have to have a poised mind. A mind that is able to poise for the second, to self-reflect. And to self-reflect and then really go deep into our own principles and deep into our own values and deep into our own sort of like a knowledge and the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha that concords with our own. And doing so, then when we actually come to know that habit has once again seized us, or habit has continuously been seizing us or threatening us, we must definitely have remorse. Remorse is grace. Remorse is not a negative thing. Remorse in this way, to strive for the positive and to have a remorse over one's old negative habits that is rooted deep in one's own confused mind isn't a positive. It is not at all self flagellation. It is a positive, with a clean and completeness of one's own remorse can actually free oneself, as the Nagarjuna have stated. A moon can be seized by the Rahul, but when it comes out, it can be brighter than before it was seized. And what does make that do? In a practitioner's is the remorse. Remorse with a deep sense of truly, revitalizing one's core values, revitalizing one's core beliefs, revitalizing the wisdom and the compassion for all. So, if I look at in my own masters, they look so beautiful, and they look so regal, and they look so enlightened from the beginning. But as you read the biographies, they have gone through a lot in their life. And they had also confessed a lot of their own wrongdoings. And wrongdoings that is being incited by their habit and the confusions. But through the remorse, through the practice of the confessions and through the four powers, this is now where they are, what they have come to be, which then actually makes us all in awe, and which makes us all to look at them and then see like they are enlightened from the beginning. This is the story with the Milarepa as well. So, to me, when I can have a real, genuine remorse from my heart, where actually my own tears come down from my own eyes, where my own heart feels tender and raw and open and acknowledge, as well as also really see the way out, and then thus feel the sort of like a positiveness of the way out. That is a grace that I feel the most strongest in myself from any other graces that I could actually feel from outside or with the other practices. So I will actually really speak this. I'm speaking this from my own self. Remorse in something that habitually we have done that is a negative is positive. But something that we have done that is a positive, something that is a positive, and later we regret it, then that regret becomes, or the remorse becomes, are negative. Like in the 52 mental events of the Buddha Dharma and the Abhidharma, remorse or the regret or sleep are the two sort of thing that in what relation it is applied, it becomes a positive or negative. If it is applied in the relation to one's own negative habits and wrongdoings and the confused and unconscious state of mind, it becomes a positive. It becomes a great boost for one's own self-esteem and great boost for one's own to sort of like shade that and then become clear and cleaner, like the moon that is just has come out of the Rahul's mouth. Now if it is the other way, if we have a regret, if we have a remorse towards something that we have done positive, that has been a benefit for oneself and that has been a benefit for others, but later with some kind of like a reasons, we regret it or we remorse, then that destroys the merit that one has actually accumulated in the past. And then the regret becomes the cause of doing it so. But here we are actually talking about a remorse to our own individuals. Individuals. Habits. That is deep-seated, unconscious, that comes on us, that makes us do many. Now in there, I think we all have some like that. I am myself not free of that kind of habits. I myself have to be always in guard. I myself always have to be guard physically and verbally and mentally, particularly mentally, not to sort of harbor any ill intentions or harbor any grudge or harbor any kind of a sense of an animosity with anyone, even though there's some wrong being done. Because here, for me personally, as a practitioner, I want that grace. I want that grace of being the practitioner, having the value of the being the practitioner, and the wisdom and the compassion mindset of the Bodhisattva. So, regrets is really very, very important. Remorse is very, very important. And it is the most powerful grace that I can actually think of. Therefore, in all sadhanas, any kind of like a practice, whether it is in the Hinayana or whether it is in the Mahayana or whether it is in the Vajrayana, there is a confession always. If there's nothing to be confessed and if one is perfect in the beginning, why would there be a confession? So, confession is there because we have all something to confess and something to regret, something to remorse, and then thus come out of it. Now the second is then we must keep our bodhicitta intact. We must practice kindness in the face of challenge. We must practice compassion in the face of challenge. When we don't practice kindness and compassion in the face of challenges that rises within in us, and we hold on to any of the reasons that might actually deter us away from the kindness and the compassion for all, we have the bodhicitta to bring us back. We have the bodhicitta to bring us back and the bodhicitta to also, in these situations, to increase. As a part of increasing bodhicitta in this kind of in a situation and the situations that actually challenges us, mind has to be at peace. Mind is not going to be at peace at any time when it is aggravated with anger, when it's aggravated with hatred, when it's aggravated with grudge, when it's aggravated with some kind of like a very strong emotions of that nature. And those emotions are human emotions. They truly can come. It comes up again and again. But yet at the same time, whether we are to succumb to them, whether we allow ourselves to succumb to them, it's not about not having any of those mind or the emotions or the states, but whether we succumb to them, whether we follow the chain of the events that sort of like goes and goes and goes and deter us away from the path and the practice. That, as a practitioner, is in our own hands. It is very possible that actually we get hardened and then we get soft. And we get hardened and we get soft. And we get hardened again and we get soft. But in the end, we want to land in the soft place for our own mental and emotional health and well-being, and for the health of everyone that is related to us as well. Now for that, then forgiveness is another grace. Forgiveness is another grace that can actually soften your mind. That can actually, with your own sort of like self-empowerment, be able to soften your mind and thus stay on course of your own path and practice and the bodhicitta, and thus make you able to go forward with a much more gain in your own self-confidence and self-poise and grace that is eminent to shine from your own being. So, forgiveness is another grace that we must practice. That I, for myself, forgiveness and being able to sort of get to the place of a true sense of self-empowerment to forgive is a very, very healing as well. And not only healing, but makes me feel a great sense of, again, enhancement, practice for my bodhicitta and for my own sort of a path to move forward. And if we actually think about the 10 aspects, 10 sort of a dushi, or the consciousness that we must practice before we die, it is one of the foremost important aspect of that 10. Forgiveness. Forgiveness so that your heart and your mind is clean to move on. Move on from where you are in this life to the next. Every day is the next. Every hour is the next. Every minute is the next. And then, most importantly, from this world into the next. So as a practitioner of the dharma and as a practitioner of the bodhicitta, and if the bodhicitta really is what we believe, to sort of really bring us the enlightenment, or meanwhile in the world, the great joy in the freedom, then I really do feel we must practice the remorse and the forgiveness as in a practice of a grace. Now I have thought on these issues for many, many years, and I've tried my best to practice them. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in this, but I do hold these things that we have spoken here, and particularly the grace of the remorse, the power of the remorse, and the grace of the forgiveness, and the power of the forgiveness as a part of the path, as a core value of myself. Core value of myself. Now, since I'm a teacher, and I'm sitting here as a teacher, and to say something about the Dharma that is of a value to myself, and that is a value possibly to others who have that relation with me as a teacher, I am actually speaking of this. But I'm also quite aware that people, can take the Dharma and they can actually apply to their own mind. And also they can very well, have their own critical intelligence as well to not to, take it. And that choice is always in the hands of the students. So I'm not at all, I'm just simply speaking from my own sort of like stand and from my own position as a teacher and as someone who tries to practice the bodhicitta, from my own experience, what has kind of been a great value and help for me. So, please, take it if it suits you, and I will be really obliged that if you actually take it. And that's my kind of a life's mission, to spread the Dharma or to sort of like extend the Dharma to others. But if anyway it does not meet your intelligence, and if it does not somehow meet your critical intelligence, I also, will be not offended if you don't take it at all. But this is just a point of a dialogue, and this is just a point of a really reflection, and this is just a point of a real sense of really how we as a sort of like individuals, and we as a community of the Buddha Dharma, and we as a sort of like a society in the 21st century, and we as a world in the larger context of the world of progress, we could actually perhaps move forward. Thank you very much, and I love you all, and take really good care of yourself, and be well. By this merit may I obtain omniscience, may I defeat the enemy, wrongdoing from the stormy waves, sickness and death from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings.